Testing, poo poo bum bum bum, poo poo bum bum, poo poo bum bum, poo bum boo. Hey gang, I thought I would do an interesting video. I've been thinking about the different kinds of knife enthusiasts that there are, and I truly mean this video with love. Like, all these types of enthusiasts are super valid, and I just think it's interesting to kind of go through them and perhaps just, I don't know, if you're a knife company, you might want to have a bit of insight into how I think these people work and what they're into and how to appeal to them, and just some good lessons you could learn, and also just for a bit of fun discussion. Which of these kinds are you? I may not have even got them all. I mean, we're all individual people, but people do fall into groups or tribes generally. You might be a mix of a couple of these, but I just thought that'd be interesting to go down. I've got a bit of a written list up there, so it's going to be a bit of a talky video, but I'll try and spruce it up as much as I can. Alrighty, so I'm going to start with the all-rounders. So the all-rounders are people who, as the name suggests, they're just generally seeking whatever's new knife experiences. They might have some favorite brands. Generally, these guys are after things from companies like Kershaw, Benchmade, Civivi, Boca, the guys that make stuff that you can pick up with the pay packet. At the beginning or end of a pay cycle, you can get yourself a relatively guilt-free knife and have a bit of fun. You'll use it a bit, you'll take a few photos for the gram, you'll join some communities. These are like probably most of us. Most of us are these guys, at least, partially at any rate. And some of us are just these guys, like the backbone of the knife world, really. These are the people that will probably try anything and, bounce from brand to brand and aren't particularly difficult to please, but, probably also there is such a dearth of stuff they could be buying. You probably do need to stand out just a little bit to get them buying your knives. Next is a category that's quite close to my heart, and this is, of course, the backyard scientist. So the backyard scientists, these are the guys that are into steel and geometries or lock strength and the other testable and measurable qualities of a knife. These guys want to know exactly which knives are better, worse, or the same as other knives or blades, and why exactly they are, and they want to be able to show why that is. So this is very much me, and guys of this type are generally going to be all about, from a production sense, Spyderco. Spyderco knives are these guys' favorites despite how they look, because Spyderco does what a lot of the other knife companies don't do, and that is experiment widely with different blade materials and different handle styles and different locks and everything. Spyderco really do tailor their range to these guys. There's some neutral Spydercos that the other categories of knife user obviously love as well, but a lot of those rando Spyderco knives you see in those random steels and sprint runs and mules and whatnot, they're for the backyard scientist. So these guys will be able to talk to you for hours about geometries and heat treatments and hardnesses and things like that, stuff that most of these other groups would put much less weight on when making a knife purchase. Next up is the tinkerers. So the tinkerers aren't makers just yet, but they're the folks who open their knives up. They tune the lock bars, they buy the alternative scales or clips. They often get pretty neutral looking knives, like the plain titanium type knives. They're either somewhat handy and they make new scales, or they anodize things themselves, or they're just really happy hunting the internet for little resealable bags of tiny little parts and whatnot. I always see these guys as they want to have that mutual connection with the other knife users, so they want to have the paramilitary too, right? And be able to talk to everyone else about, the general good attributes of the paramilitary too, and have the similar story on one hand, but on the other hand, they want to have a bit of, specialness to their specific paramilitary too. I understand this group a lot, but simply being where I live and having to send things back and forward, it's a little bit hard for me in Australia to enter this group and play well in it. Next is the Patriots. So these guys want US made. And if you can provide a good US made to them, they will love you for it, and they will be extremely loyal fans. They will be in the waiting lists for months, years even. They'll be hunting down variants of your knives that were maybe in print for 3 months back in 2011 and paying triple prices for them. They love their US knives. But as much as they love you, they will turn on you in a heartbeat if it seems like something is a little bit under the table or unexplainable. They will want receipts. If they get a hint that you're getting your screws made in China, they will want Hans Blix to go on and do a full-on factory inspection and come back with video footage of everything being made, and that is just a part of dealing with this group. If you want to stand on the somewhat lucrative and very honest and very sort of salt of the earth group that is the patriot group of the knife community, and you want to take their money, then by gum, you want to be able to back it up, that everything that you're saying is US made is US made, because whether you think it's fair or not, if you want to continue doing business with them, even if some little troublemaker gets online and says, I heard leather and screws are made in Taiwan, these guys will come for you, and you better be ready, whether you think you should have to or not, be ready to prove it to them. It's just a part of taking their money, is providing them that satisfaction. Next is the bargain hunters. So these guys are the ones that get excited by Ganzo knives. They love that those two Sun knives on Wish and Amazon are made of S90V steel and all the wacky and weird and wonderful patterns. Ganzo guys, I used to just refer to them as Ganzo guys because that used to be the brand, but you know, they're also the Sanwa and Mu guys. These are the guys that just truly see a knife as a global thing, and how it's just how it is in hand and how it cuts, and you know, maybe a bit about what materials are involved, but they truly get excited about getting something that they feel is a tangible win in their hand for not very much money at all. I find myself drowned in the generic when I look into these knives, but these guys are the ones that put effort into knowing, you know, what is a bad, you know, cheap knife and what's a good cheap knife, and you know, they probably don't even use the word cheap anymore. They've moved past that, and they'll say value knife, and yeah, there's a whole lot of nuance to this, and it's probably a field that I don't have a great understanding of, but I definitely know that they are a separate group unto themselves, apart from just the all-rounders. These guys, they're feverish about what they like, and they'll rapidly hunt down all of the stuff, even when they do have to go into those murkier corners of the internet, the stuff that they want. Then there's the art collectors. So these are the custom knife guys. These are the guys that want the knife to come with a personality out the box. Some other guys are happy to, you know, you might be a tinkerer and happy to get a production knife, add the personality to it later on, or you're happy to just use a knife and let the trails and the dings it wears become the knife's sort of heart and soul. These guys want the full experience of having something made by another human, that intimacy between them and a maker, maybe some specifics that they ask the maker for. Maybe they want to completely do a 100% custom build where they've been involved with the CAD drawing, you know, from the beginning. These are the rich guys. These are the ones that, well, if they're not rich, they're certainly putting this at the forefront of their financial endeavors, because yeah, they'll be dropping several $1,000s on a knife, you know, fairly frequently, and they'll have their designers that they're supremely loyal to. They're people that once it's worked once for them, they'll have a whole batch of, you know, Tashi knives or Frank Fisher knives, or well, I don't play with this group at all, so I don't know any of the other ones, only the ones that are more infamous than famous. But again, a difficult group to sort of be a part of, because you're going to be doing lots of waiting, lots of wheeler dealing, and yeah, really lots of waiting, and there seems to be a generally huge amount of fulfillment involved for these guys, because it's that whole thing generally, as in a lot of parts of life, patience generally is a virtue, and being patient for something, eventually it does often pay huge dividends in getting you exactly, specifically what you want, and that's what these guys are all about. The warrior. So these are the guys that even still in this highly gentrified world where, you know, technology rolls our lives and we're all, you know, at home watching Netflix and chilling out, these are the guys that still put a fair bit of weight in how their knife will perform in a, you know, in a more primitive role, and whether it's in a martial role or whether it's in an outdoor survival role. These are the guys that'll, they'll in a controlled way dip their toes into those waters. Even still, they might go and do a self-defense course with their knife. They might go out and do a bushcrafting expedition. These guys will go and do things that the world no longer requires us to do, but they'll go and do them because that scratches that little boy itch that I think we all still have just a little bit. You know, that thing where you give a little kid a particularly good stick, you know, and the first thing you would do is take a couple of swings with it, or make a couple of jabs with it, or bend it into a bow and tie a shoelace between it. You know, these guys, they just let that little voice in their head play a little bit larger into their knife hobby even still. So they'll get a knife, the first thing they'll do is see how it feels in a reverse grip, and maybe take a couple of like playful lunges with it in front of the mirror, and you know, in the back of their head there's always that thing, what if I had to use my knife to defend myself? And you know, it's a obviously fairly lucrative part of the knife world, because this whole companies, these are your Cold Steel guys for a start, these are your Emerson guys. They're people that like to know that there's at least a little bit of that primal thought put into their knives, that even now in the 21st century they are buying from their drop shipped, ordering it in a drone from Amazon delivered, you know, super modern world. They want their knife to, you know, be able to be a bit caveman for them even still. The social flat layers, these are the guy that relishes the aesthetics overall. super neat little EDC drops full of color-coded things in a grid-based presentation. These are the guys that carry all the odds and ends as well with their knives. So they'll get the little nifty front flipper, and then they'll get the little bottle opener that kind of matches it, the little custom-made torch tube that's got, you know, it's not just a black, you know, boring old tube that the rest of us are after. They get a little custom tube as well. You know, they're all after that sort of matching set of gear, and the knife to them is just a part of that pocket fashion, really. And, you know, not to say they're not at least one of these other categories as well, but these are the fellas that have the Instagrams with the thousands and thousands of followers on them. That's where they've put all of their effort into making these neat, digestible little pictures. And I think, honestly, these guys want to offer some other ideas about things that they've maybe come across that help them in an EDC sense, and maybe you haven't thought to carry like a little pair of tweezers or a little pair of, you know, what were they doing this year? It was all the Knipex pliers. You know, I saw them bouncing around. I mean, I couldn't actually imagine carrying a pair of Knipex pliers every day, but these guys apparently do, and it's always some new little thing like that. A little while ago they were into the fidget spinners or the tops and whatnot, often lots of little one-piece multi-tools in the shapes of cute little things and whatnot. These guys get that enjoyment from that aesthetic and from that sort of unity in not just knives, but how it bleeds into everything else in their pants pocket as well. The compulsive collectors. So these guys are the ones that just have never thrown a knife out. They have knives that are covered in rust from when they were little kids, and they're usually cabinets and cabinets full of knives will tell their knife story from when they were very, very young. And these will have the largest collections of all of us. They can't throw anything away. Often these guys have knives at the forefront of their lives, often to the detriment of other aspects of their life. You know, maybe they're just single guys and this is how they scratch their itch. You know, all of their itches are in that next knife purchase and that huge collection, just going through it and flicking through it. And, you know, this is a compulsion that, you know, can develop into this, you know, into this sort of unhealthy level. But I think even most of these guys have it sort of still, they're still feeding themselves, they're still meeting people, making friends. I think most of them are still online and chatting with people, but these guys definitely go a bit beyond any of the other categories, and that they can pretty much produce anything they've ever bought, or at least they know where it is in their house. And, you know, whether it's an expensive knife or a cheap knife, these guys will love their Victorinoxes as much as they love their zero tolerances, as much as they love their, you know, Jens Anso customs. It's, you know, truly a field for everything and anything, these guys, and they love it all. They love it all. And it's a little bit more than I've ever been. I've always just found myself too easy. It's too easy for me to just trade to get my next knife. These guys will save. These guys will go without to get their next knife because they don't want to throw out any other knives because they love all of them. And lastly, at number 10 are the people who only collect case knives. Now, I don't want to sound dramatic, but I shouldn't even be calling them people. These are monsters. They don't drink water or eat food or breathe air. They actually go into another room when you're not looking and they go, and a mouth inside their mouth sucks in this element that we can't even perceive, like we don't even perceive it as humans, and they suck in that element and that's how they sustain themselves. And then they go back to their like burrow or warren thing, and all the other pod people are there and they all stand together and go until the next case knife comes in the mail. We don't talk about case knife people here. Alright guys, that's the video. Just remember, like, you might be part of one of these groups, or you might be all of them, or you might be none of them, or maybe there's a group that I haven't even thought of, or maybe you're a few of them. The main lesson is that, you know, we're all here for a very thin slice in universal history. You know, 14 billion years where we weren't here, and we're going to be here for, like, on the timeline, it's a strand as thin as a molecule. You know, if you put all existence on a football field, we'd be like a single atom's width, you know, our little short lives. So it's how you choose to spend it, you know, rather than spending it tribally or infighting with each other. I think we should all just get along and be a bit more united as a knife community. Against the case people. They should all be grabbed and thrown into bins, and the bins should be thrown into the sea. Bury them in Davy Jones's locker, where no matter how much they go, they still can't get enough of their element, and they can take all their case knives with them, and then we'll pour sand on it, and then we'll pour concrete on it, and then we'll throw it into a volcano. Alright guys, cheers, peace out, have a good one, Happy New Year, goodbye.